gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe. Here, in this great hall of the Signal Watch, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Join us as we discuss all manner of topics across the multiverse of comic books, history, creators, storylines, movies, and more. The Signal Watch podcast presents Kryptonian Thought Beast, a comics podcast series dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
Just came to my senses, yo. I stay in another dimension. Fear is non-existent. Suit up and swing through the city. Hey, annihilate. I'm wide awake. Be very afraid. I'm in my own world. Give me space. I'm in my own universe. Give me space.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens, and with me today is...
Jamie.
And Doug. And Doug, sorry.
And Doug.
Talked over you.
I didn't know who was going first.
Me neither.
We never know. Let's do this again one more time. So we are talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the movie whose name I can never remember. It just came out last week for us. Doug, you've seen it twice at this point, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
And we have seen it once between the two of us. So everyone's viewed it. At this point, hopefully we all have a lot of important and good things to say, but I did want to point out that last time a Spider-Man movie came out, Doug wound up on a podcast called Obsessed with Joseph Scrimshaw, which I will link to, and discussed his disgust of discussed the first Spider-Man movie. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and kind of what that was so people get interested and want to tune in?
Yeah, sure. So I was a huge fan of the first Into the Spider-Verse movie that came out in 2018, and just was, and we'll get into this more later, but just impressed by the visual style and how funny it was and what a great story it was. So I just made it my personal mission to make sure everyone I knew saw it, and that unfortunately meant seeing it multiple times, just taking people to go see the movie. I was also
unfortunately.
Yeah, I was getting stuff out of it, rewatching it. It's a very rewatchable movie, but it sort of became a joke. How many times I'd seen it? I probably saw it 10 times in the theater. I honestly lost count. I have no idea. But around the same time, Joseph. I was going to visit him in LA, and he said, "Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we do an episode of Obsessed while you're down here?" And I was like, "Okay." Now I just need a topic. And his podcast, he usually has one guest on, and they pick something they're obsessed with, and they talk about the thing they're obsessed with and their obsession. And it's a good podcast. I like it. And I was like, "Okay, let me think about it and get back to you with a title or with a topic." And then 20 minutes later, I emailed him. He's like, "Yeah, got it." Duh. I thought it would be a great platform to, get the word out about the movie too, because it did okay, but compared to
Doug,
yeah.
It worked because this one did very well, and it was all thanks to you and your promotion on the podcast.
I did it. I'm a spider ambassador. Yeah. Anyway, that was a lot of fun doing that podcast. So at this rate, I will only be podcasting about Spider-Verse movies.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely not, because I'm sure we'll destroy you with something over Christmas. But
good point.
When I heard the first one was coming out, I was honestly a little skeptical. Like I wasn't skeptical of the concept coming out in the comics. I thought that was an interesting pivot for them to do, but something about it, because it was coming from Sony, to be candid, it was like, it felt a little money grabby, and I was like, they're not going to know what to do with this. And I just basically wasn't paying any attention. And Jamie and I went to see something at the Alamo, and they showed the trailer for it. And the trailer included the shot of the subway passing Miles and him jumping off the building inverted.
But they'd spoiled the climax of the movie, but I didn't care, because when I saw that shot of him jumping upward into the skyscrapers, I was sold. I was 100% going to go see this movie.
The funny thing about the trailer is that someone at work was excited and sent it out, and so I was watching it. I think I was actually in Austin when I saw it, but I was watching it just on my phone, waiting for something, and I was kind of like, "Yeah, it looks all right," because I couldn't really tell that it was good, visually. I was like, "It looks pretty interesting," and because I just didn't have a good enough view of it, so I really hadn't seen. Once I realized who was involved, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, I was totally sold on going to see it. So I sort of avoided trailers, as I tend to do, before I saw it. So it was pretty much new to me when I saw it on the big screen, and it blew me away. Absolutely.
I did go back and check my blog, and this podcast is part of a written blog. So if you're curious what it's like to hear from just me and the things that come out of my head, that's out there. But I checked, and Jamie, I believe we saw it in the theater 3 times.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
See, that's a reasonable number of times.
Yeah. We saw it the first time, came out, said, we're going to see that again, and immediately got more tickets. And then we went, before it left theaters, we said, let's go see it again before it leaves the theater.
Smart.
Because it's really an experience.
Yeah. I mean, on top of the however many times I saw it in the theater, I bought it on Google so I could frame through it at certain parts of the movie, which, I learned more stuff doing that. Obviously didn't watch the whole movie frame by frame, but certain parts that go by really quickly, I sort of wanted to see, what the animation, how they pull it off frame by frame. And that was pretty fascinating too. So
yeah, in some ways I feel unprepared for this podcast because we've only seen it once. And it was almost a week ago, and it's just so much that I know there's so much that I missed.
That's honestly
so we're going to have to rely on you a little bit.
I wanted to get another viewing in before recording this, and I'm going to see it again on Saturday with friends that couldn't make it the first time. So here we go. It won't be the last time I see it either.
Yeah, I was excited to hear they were going to do another one. I wasn't sure because of what had occurred with the box office on the first one, which was, I don't think they lost money. But,
no, it was fine, but it wasn't impressive.
Yeah, and then the first time I got a clue that the kids had really discovered the first one was shortly after everyone went home to go do class over Zoom, and the pipe basically couldn't handle it. They would say, "Oh, you're glitching," when people would freeze on the screen, and that's when I was like, "Oh, glitching," and oh yeah, it's a Spider-Man reference. You wouldn't get it. I was like, "Oh, I get it." It seemed like it became this thing that everyone kind of gradually saw over home video, which I don't really remember the last thing that kind of did that. I feel like it's hard to know because we had the 3 years of COVID, but I don't really remember the last thing that didn't do so well at the box office and then came back with a sequel that absolutely, killed it, except for Captain America and Thor are really the two things that come to mind. And that was some time ago. That was like 2011.
Yeah. So, and Thor sort of involved switching, drivers.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was way more of a shift.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, I was excited about hearing the new one was coming, and we were all primed to go see it. We just started going back to see movies in the theater. This was the second one we had seen together in the theater. It we even moved our tickets up because I was so convinced, and correctly so, that social media was going to spoil it for me if I didn't see it quickly. So we went Saturday morning instead of Sunday evening last week. And I regret nothing. It was great. We went to a kid-friendly screening, and there were children all over the place.
The kids were so good. I mean, it's a long movie, and they were real quiet.
Very long movie.
Yeah.
It's the longest U.S. produced animated movie.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really?
It really is.
Oh,
yeah.
I think that's
it's over 2 hours.
Yeah, it's over 2 hours. The other fun fact, I think it's the most people working on a single animated feature in the world ever.
I mean, if you look at the art,
it's not surprising.
It makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would have to.
Yeah, it's insane. Even the first movie took, I think, over 100 animators. Honestly, like that, the first movie, go listen to the other podcast if you want to talk more about that first movie. But I'll just say that, like, I give huge props to everyone involved at Sony for giving that project, the faith that they did, because they could have easily pulled the plug. It went way over budget. They ripped up their animation pipeline to try to do something new, and it was a weird animation style, and it took a lot of confidence to actually let that finish. And any one of the producers there could have just said, no, this isn't what we're doing.
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to Amy Pascal. She the very smart person, and I mean, she's the one who kind of brokered the deal with Disney to get Spidey over into the MCU and understood the value there. And to do this, and her name is all over these two films. I mean, I know it's Lord and Miller, but she is the person who was like, we need to just support these guys. It's going to seem crazy, but we need to support them. And it's the difference between that. And I hate to say anything negative about Kathleen Kennedy, but her pulling Lord and Miller off of Han Solo.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
The opposite. They didn't have faith. And honestly, I'm more of a fan of Lord and Miller's animated work than their live action stuff, although I've enjoyed both. So who knows what the hell was going on. I have theories about why they thought that wasn't a good fit, but that's a big deal to kick somebody off of an active production, right?
Hey guys, it's a leap of faith.
Next time on the Signal Watch.
Good night, everybody.
So yeah, this one, it had some buzz going around it. The trailers all looked good. I do watch trailers, and was plenty pumped for it. I also want to call out the fact that right now we have the Writers Guild strikes happening. It seems like the SAG is going to join them they've already been on the picket line with them because they have nothing else to do right now. But they also are joining them in striking. And one of the things I wanted to just kind of tee off with before we got into the visuals is story with both of these films and their writing. Which I think, having had just sat, and I'm going to keep going back to it, having had just sat through Quantumania, yeah, I mean, that's the only proper reaction to Quantumania. You have viable characters that people like, and Quantumania showed you what not to do, and I did really enjoy the third Guardians of the Galaxy, but this movie did something that I think is completely insane, which is be what, the third or fourth movie about multiverse stuff in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And still make it seem completely fresh, make it emotionally resonant in a way that isn't relying on nostalgia necessarily. Not that Homecoming is relying on nostalgia
or animal torture. That's if you're talking about Guardians.
Yeah.
That's the other way to get the audience emotionally involved.
Yeah.
Baby raccoons.
Oh.
No.
But it's a remarkable bit of fiction, and because I think it ties in so well with things that just resonate with everybody. And one of the things that we used to talk about when we did the high school podcast was high school is kind of like the last time everybody kind of has something in common before you're kind of shot out into the adult world and everyone kind of pursues their various directions. And Miles is still within that world of still living with his parents, still. And if you can't relate to what Miles is going through, you had a very different childhood from myself.
Yeah, and it's more of a grown-up story too than, the previous one. He's older now, he's a little more mature, and he's kind of clashing with his parents. They use sort of the superhero thing as a metaphor for just having it be hard to tell your parents what's going on with you.
And you do get a lot of perspective from the parents as well.
Yeah.
I mean, numerous parents.
Yeah. Talking about the story and the writing, the thing when I compare it to like Quantumania, and I'm just like, what, how did anyone greenlight that script? And how is the script so bad? You spent $200 million on visual effects and like, you didn't mind having a terrible script. Like, why would you waste that money? And like, I wonder if part of it is like, I know through interviews and through other projects that Lord and Miller have been on, that they're super collaborative and not afraid to rewrite stuff. And like the writing never stops as far as they're concerned. So, and like, I know that some of the actors brought ideas in, and they would workshop scenes between like the important scenes in the movie, like between, Gwen Stacy and her father. They would actually bring the actors in and like read through it and like rework it. And like, I just wonder if that sort of thing was missing from Quantumania, or I don't know.
Yeah, well, Quantumania sounds like it was also written during the start of COVID when everyone was in lockdown, and I think it just didn't have enough eyes on it by the time they actually got to roll the thing out. I think that definitely ended up hurting it when you think about things like, well, what happened in rehearsal and what could they have fixed? Like, they weren't really doing that. Everyone's like running in masked up, to go shoot the scene and then and run away. But you're right. I did see in some promo thing Jamie was watching that Shamik Moore and Haley Steinfeld recorded scenes together this time. They had not been in the booth at the same time during the first film.
Right. Yeah.
And also Daniel Kaluuya, is that his name? Who played Spider-Punk?
Kaluuya.
He was talking about how much collaboration he was allowed, and because they were asking him. He was from the section of London.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
That Spider-Punk is from.
Right.
So they were asking him what about that, the lingo and
right. We want you to Camden Town the hell out of this.
Yes, exactly. He honestly thought it was too much, and they were like, we will tell you when it's too much.
Yeah, we'll edit some of this out, but just give it all to us so we have it to work with. And they did the same thing with I think it's Karan Soni, who played Spider-Man India.
Oh yes.
Like, I think they were like, this character is not Indian enough, so they brought it.
The Chai-Tea bit was his. Yeah, his idea.
Right. Exactly. And they brought him into a very early writing session to sort of talk about, how do we make this, because, Karan grew up in India, and how do we make this more authentic? And I think the other example I'd heard is that, what's her name? Lauren Velez, who plays Miles's mom.
Oh, yeah.
There's a scene, and I didn't understand what they were saying the first time I saw the movie because it's in Spanish. It's a really emotional scene where it's the one where she ungrounds Miles before he goes off to follow Gwen. And there's a really heartfelt scene between the two of them, and some of it is in Spanish. And there's a very Puerto Rican part in there that she suggested that it turns out her mom suggested. Oh. Her mom's like, you have to get this in, where Miles asks for her blessing in Spanish, which is apparently something that anyone from Puerto Rico would recognize. So like 10% of the audience maybe got it. But that was something that she brought in and thought it was really important to make it more authentic.
I saw that interview, and Lord and Miller basically said, if 10% of the audience gets it, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
Because you're not like, it's not excluding everyone else. I mean, there's so much more movie for you to enjoy. Also, you can go look it up later,
Yeah, and like it's sort of it's the movie. Both movies obviously are trying to be very diverse and invite a lot of audience into the experience that might have felt excluded, from a standard issue Spider-Man white Peter Parker movie. And it's paying off. Like this movie's doing really well overseas. It's like, so I really want this movie to do well, and it's going gangbusters. I guess it's like the box office is great, the reviews are great. It's the highest non-documentary score I've seen on Metacritic for a while, which is saying a lot for a superhero movie. Those are usually around 60, 70, and this is like an 86. So,
oh, wow.
All the numbers are good, and I'm rambling on, so stop me. But I do think that, like, after seeing Quantumania in particular, I'm just sort of like, maybe Marvel should just let these guys make their films for a while, like until they figure out what the hell they're doing. Like, just, you mentioned earlier, like, how this is like the 90th multiverse movie in a while and still has a fresh take. And we can get into the visuals, but I think that is one of the reasons that it is such a fresh take. Like when you watch, like, say, Doctor Strange going to different dimensions, like, oh, the crosswalk signs are different here, or, the money looks weird, as opposed to stepping into a world made of watercolor, right?
Yeah.
Which you can only really do, at least today, in animation. So I think that was one of the reasons it worked so well as a multiverse movie.
Before we completely switch over into visuals,
I didn't. Mean to do
I
that.
did want to. No, that's fine. I did just want to mention that this is the second part of a 3-parter, which I think I had read like a month ago and completely forgotten, because when we got into this movie, I, even from the beginning, was thinking, this is a lot of story they're building up.
I think,
like,
I'm
and
with
they just
you.
kept.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh. And then it started getting towards the end, and I was just, how are they going to wrap this up?
I had the exact same experience.
And this, I mean, we're getting, like, I wasn't really clocking the time or anything, but because I was enjoying myself.
Yeah.
But then it ended, and I was like, oh, right. And you could just hear the collective groan of the audience.
Yeah, both times I saw it, there was like an audible reaction from the audience at the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Everybody was really excited and just sort of like, what?
I felt a sense of relief.
I did too.
Honest, because I was so concerned they were going to try and wrap everything up in like a bow in like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, there wasn't time to wrap all that up.
And I was like, and it's a small subroutine you're running, because you're really watching the movie. But at the same time, I'm like, I know they've come by. It's the Alamo, so you have your little period of, we're gonna, last call. Here's your check. Those things are happening to trigger you to, like, the movie really is ending, and it wasn't anywhere close to done as far as I was concerned.
When like Spot, the villain Spot shows up in his final eldritch horror form at the end, it's like my bladder has a limited size, and I think this is going to take a while. So it was like, oh, thank God. Okay.
Well, and also a little thing that just shows how engaging this plot is and how much is going on at once. When I'm usually watching an animated movie, especially these days because they get such high profile actors to do it, my brain will stop and focus on someone speaking and go, who is that? I didn't do that in this movie.
I did.
I waited, and afterwards, it was when I was doing it. But like the credits started rolling, and I was like, Oscar Isaac was in this.
The one that drove me crazy was the Ms. Weber in the Office, and I was like, "Who is that?" And I just
it's Rachel Dratch. Yeah,
that
one I got.
They kept playing that in the like a trailer or a preview or something, and the second I saw her, she looks like her.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did draw her to look like Rachel. That's true.
Yeah. But everyone else, I just was like, there's not time for me to stop and think about it.
I think it was only I did recognize Andy Samberg. That's a pretty distinctive voice.
I didn't.
And Jason Schwartzman, I actually didn't recognize, but
I didn't either. And that one was bothering me a little bit just because he was talking so much in the store in the beginning. But then the story picked up again, and then I was just like, whatever. I'm not going to stop and think about it.
Hey, and mad kudos to Shea Wiggum, who has managed to play a police captain 10,000 ways, and he found a way to do it animated. So,
right, yeah.
Well done, Shea Wiggum.
He can do it with only his voice. Yeah, that's Gwen's dad.
Okay.
Captain Stacy.
No, he was great.
Yeah, no, I mean, the cast on this thing, clearly the power of the first film meant they could get whoever they wanted to for this. I mean, it's, again, they brought back, I'm not going to try and pronounce, Mahershala Ali as Uncle Aaron, but you already mentioned who they brought in for Hobie as Daniel Kaluuya. I do want to make a mention of, and I don't think I even mentioned it to Jamie in the car on the way home, and I meant to, the Prowler, the Hobie Brown was the Prowler when I was reading comics as a kid. That's who that was, and they've repurposed him back into Spider-Punk. I guess in that universe. But Oscar Isaac, as you mentioned, Issa Rae as Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman.
She was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect casting.
Greta Lee plays Lila. Who else was in this thing? Jack Quaid plays Peter Parker.
Don't forget J.K. Simmons.
Simmons
that voice I recognized immediately.
who is J. Jonah Jameson in every universe, apparently.
Yes.
Which I am fine with personally.
Yep.
100%. Yep. I confess, I even have the official Jonah figure of him.
Oh, nice.
The Marvel Legends. Yeah.
Nice.
Before we get too far along, I do want to, because I'll forget if I let the podcast go too long. I'm participating currently in another podcast from time to time called Superheroes Every Day. I did do a 3-part series on Quantum Mania where you can hear my great dislike of the movie in 3 parts. Do look for it at superheroeseveryday.com. Anyway, that's the only plug I'm going to do on that one, but go check out Danny. He's an awesome blogger and podcaster. So yeah, I mean, the voice acting in this thing was absolutely phenomenal. And as you were starting to get into, Doug, the design of the different characters, which is something that in the first movie they played with. In this one, they just went like bananas with. You first, you get the Gwen universe that, to me, and I know there's other artists who are doing this who've probably upped their game. It reminded me a bit of David Mack art from about 20 years ago in some ways, of the kind of bleeding in the watercolor over the pen and ink to get that amazing effect.
Yeah, I think that was, I didn't read them, but I think that was inspired by a lot of the Spider-Gwen comic book covers that were done in sort of a watercolor style, and the pastels, obviously. And
I love how the art style is a reflection of the character. Like in each case, like Gwen is the graceful, like her spider abilities come from her dance background. Like she's balletic and she wears ballet shoes, and there's a softness there. And then Spider-Man India has like this chaotic, like vibrancy going, and it's like not as perfected as like Miles's universe, which is a lot sharper. Like, and it just fits so well with the character. And I know that's done like in the comic books, like there's a source material for that, but I'm so glad they managed to bring that to the screen too.
Yeah. It's sort of striking that, you can sort of, to harp on what I mentioned earlier about the advantage you have when you're animating this, like if you looked at any frame of this movie, you would know what universe you're in. Like just one frame, you just know. That's how different they're able to make all these universes look, which is just astounding. And also to have it be to do that without making it so distracting that it pulls you away from the story, I think is a sort of a tightrope, because you can go really wild and have it be unwatchable, right? So I think they really had to do a lot of experimentation and work on that, and they knocked it out of the park.
Well, but they also didn't do too many, because a lot of the action takes place in the midway, like the Spider Lounge world, where they're all hanging out, and it's just kind of not a generic background, but they don't focus as much on like the universe.
Yeah,
details.
You don't get a huge sense of place
It's
until they
more
go
about,
out, until they take the fight outside, and then you
that's
get
true.
More of a.
But it's more about like the thousands of characters that are shoved in there.
Yeah, just like, who do we want in this? Everyone.
I did see another interview where it said, just talking about all of the different spider people and spider horses, spider cats,
dinosaur.
spider dinosaur. Every thwap of the web has a different sound. Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is. Oh, and the one that killed me was the Lego one in the very beginning. I mean, he just says thwap.
He makes all of his own. He's like pulling up his watch and he goes beep, boop, beep, beep with his mouth. It's just so perfect.
Oh my God, that was hilarious.
That one was the Jack Quaid one, right?
No. Well, I'm not positive. I think Jack Quaid voiced one of the animated TV show, like Ultimate Spider-Man or something, and that character was in the movie. So that's who Jack Quaid.
Okay, yeah, I saw that character pop up for a few seconds. Yeah,
I'm not positive. I don't know who voiced the Lego one. That he may have done both.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, it it was interesting because I haven't really watched a Spider-Man cartoon aside from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and most of my life I dip in, but I was not of the right age to watch like the 90s Spidey.
Yeah.
And then there have been like, I would say, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I think there's been about 24 Spider-Man cartoons of some kind since about 2000. And so that's not something I've really been able to keep up with, because I kind of do more DC animation than Marvel, but I do keep up with the comics to an extent, at least keep one eye on them. And it was really interesting, like the very real things from the comics they were pulling out, and then leaning in hard on the Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider stuff that was part of why I kind of left Spider-Man comics in the dust, during that era. But I don't know if I know he appeared in the cartoons as well, but it felt very of that period of like almost David Michelin and those kinds of artists from that period. Anyway, it was amazing to see how that animated that well and integrating in with everything else. And just, I know there was the screen where Miles first arrives with Gwen and Hobie, and they're walking down the hallway, and all who everybody is popping up.
Yeah.
And the only one I had time to read said something along the lines of, "It doesn't matter who this guy is."
Right. It just gets to the point where it's just ridiculous how many of them there are. It's great. They sort of take that trope of the little editor's note, and then they use it to help tell the story. Like, there are too many of these to read and have time to count. Like, that's how many Spider-Mans there are.
I don't think they did that in the first movie, did they?
No. I don't think they had any. There were maybe one like little editor pull out note, but not really.
Yeah, the first one that popped up in this movie, I was like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
I don't have time to read that. That's what I thought. I'll catch that in the next round.
But when you were talking about buying it on Google so you could watch it frame by frame, that was the first thing that popped in my mind.
Yeah, I'll definitely be checking those out. Although someone's probably already like,
done a
transcribed
YouTube
all those
video on it, probably.
Yeah, and honestly, like every YouTube video you see is like, here's every Easter egg in the movie, and that's that's fun. It's not really why I love the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like I like recognizing some of the stuff, but I couldn't have told you who, all the different incarnations of Spider-Man are. That's not really my thing. Although there were clearly people the second time I watched it that recognized all of them because they were losing their minds, and that's super fun. It's just not my particular interest.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll be candid and say, when I first when the comics first started doing some of the Spider-Verse stuff, DC owned the multiverse for a very long time, for like 20 years, and then they kind of gave up on it for a bit in the 80s with Crisis. And then but it was such a big thing that it kept bleeding in around the edges of the DC universe, and they've kind of had about 4 or 5 different events, all of which seem to be trying to undo Crisis on Infinite Earth, to try to shove everything into one box. I've always liked the concept of multiple Earths in a way. I thought it was very strange that Spider-Man, who I had always thought of as being like, he has kind of a level of villain he fights, and he is a dude who lives in an apartment and has no money.
Yeah. He doesn't go to space. He doesn't do all these,
Yeah, Doctor Strange across a multiverse of madness, that tracks.
Sure.
And so I never gave it a shot in the comics. And, I also, it's not like I'm not spending money on comics, but that was not one place I put my money. And so, and of course, even with the first film, I was like, well, this is contained. They're making it make sense. It's fun. And of course, they told such a great story, found family, all that kind of stuff, that this film, I was a little skeptical going in, and I'm totally sold. The story that they wanted to tell, in the point they were trying to make, that his mother, kind of gives the thesis statement of the film, of you're going to go places where they're going to tell you you're not wanted.
Right.
I'm an upper middle class raised white kid. Like, that's just not been my life experience. And male at that. I got some things set up for me. I thought it was such a beautiful way to kind of execute that idea and to communicate it to people who maybe don't have that experience.
Right.
To make you really empathetic or sympathetic with that concept.
And it wasn't too, that sort of thing can feel really heavy-handed in movies if it's not done, elegantly. And I don't think they could have done it any better.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fascinating to see, coming off of an Oscar winner, being one of 2 movies about a multiverse that center on a bagel that come out this year.
I've always loved bagels, and now I have one more reason to love them. Sorry, an infinity of reasons to into the bagel verse.
That's the 4th movie.
Yeah, I hope so.
But it's just fascinating to see them doing what sci-fi has always done. So well, sci-fi does a couple of things well, right? It comments back on our own times, and it also prognosticates a bit. But the personal stories that they found between oh my God, I just forgot the name of the Michelle Yeoh movie. I thought
Everything
about
Everywhere
about
All
that
at Once.
movie. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Yes, thank you, Doug. Why would I forget that?
Because it's a lot.
Because it's really long.
By the way, sorry to interject, but did you see the poster for that movie in the Spider-Verse movie? I didn't notice it the first time. I have it in my notes because
Where is it?
I couldn't even tell you. It goes by really fast. It was, God damn it.
Like beginning, middle, end?
Put it down. It was towards the center of the movie, but it's another universe. So the name of the movie is like All the Things, All the Time, Everywhere. Or like, it's a very funny phrase. Thought I wrote it down. Anyway.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm not someone who particularly I don't seek out necessarily movies that are like straight dramas about like people having family issues. I'm not like that's just not usually my bag. But man, you wrap it in this kind of candy, I guess, and I'm happy to have that spoonful of sugar help the medicine go down. It's
a movie that does all the things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. It's great to look at. It has a wonderful story. It has great messaging. It's emotional. It makes you feel things. It makes you cry. I mean, I still cannot watch. We watched the first one the night before we went to see this one. I've seen that movie how many times? Not as many as Doug, but still a lot. Still cried at the end. Every single damn time. And I feel like this one will be the same.
Yeah, I have so much respect for. It wasn't just Phil Lord writing this one. Chris Miller, I think that they collaborated on a bunch of stuff, and I think he did a ton of writing on this too. And it sounds like almost everyone involved has a hand in the story, like we mentioned earlier, with collaborating with the actors about their characters, and even some of the animators that have ideas. I think those get definitely listened to. So I think I just have so much respect for the whole team involved with writing these movies. I couldn't have more respect for them.
Yeah, and there's and to get a little geeky, like the mechanics of the last 10 minutes of the film, perfectly executed, of you not realizing what's going on with Miles and him having jumped to the wrong place.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in my friend Stuart compared it to the Silence of the Lambs, where they're knocking on the door and you think it's the right location, but it's just a film editing technique.
Yeah.
That's a great comparison.
The hilarious thing, I agree. I think they did such a great job with the twist. Spoilers, by the way, people. Maybe we should have said.
What are you doing here?
What's so amazing about that twist is, like, when you watch the movie again, it is so obvious what's happening if you know what is happening. There are so many clues. It's ridiculous. Like, to the point where you're just like, why did I not?
Well, in the first movie, I thought nothing of the fact that spider was glitching.
Right. Yeah.
I should have, because the other characters were doing it. But I didn't. I just thought, oh, it's a radioactive spider. It's weird. So they animated it weird. And then it's a plot point in the second movie.
It is.
Amazing.
I kept hoping. I mean, I assumed they would explain why the spider was glitching, and they finally did.
I sat there literally going, why is his hoodie and jacket suddenly Lex Luthor colors? Like, I had that whole complete thought.
Right.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't
I
quite
didn't
enough.
even notice that.
Well, they're Prowler colors, really, but they're kind of traditionally used for villains in comics. And so...
Yeah, there's a great... They definitely associate the green and purple with the Prowler. Like in the first movie, when Miles first meets the Peter Parker of his universe, they have the sort of Spidey sense lines above their head that indicate they're sort of sensing each other, that they both have spider powers. And Miles's are colored green and purple. That's sort of where he would be headed without this encounter. But during that scene, they sort of change into red and blue, which is sort of the Spider-Man colors.
Oh my God.
So they definitely, like, that's a huge theme, has been since the first movie. So, like, his jacket, I think his version of that jacket is red and blue, has red and blue on it, and this one has green and purple. So same theme.
Yeah, it's that kind of like, look, you can work as hard as you want with your costumers, and some shows do, and weirdly, like, one of them is Ted Lasso, go figure. But it certainly shows like Mad Men, where they really lean into it. But back to your point about the art telling the story, I mean, that's kind of the amazing thing about animation, is you always have that opportunity to bring in all the ideas. And clearly on this film, it was yes and with everything that was coming.
Yeah, I sort of I can't imagine what it was like for the editors working on this film. It was probably a nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't finish until 2 weeks before it premiered.
I believe you. Yeah.
Which for an animated movie, I mean, well, I guess we watched that thing on the documentary on Frozen 2, and I was shocked at how chaotic that was. But a movie that's as sharp as this one, and maybe they were just, there's just so much to it that it just took that long. I assume they weren't throwing in ideas at the last minute, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
You're still crafting the story if you're still editing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, in Phil Lord's own words, the writing never stops.
Yeah.
I have no reason to disbelieve him.
Yeah, I just, I think all I was willing to say to people initially when asked about it was, oh, it's legit. Because I don't want to oversell. I don't want to, the one thing I always believe is the more awesome I hear something is, the less I want to see it, because I think I'm just going to get let down. Yeah. And I genuinely go into Marvel movies I'm looking forward to with a sense of dread. Just like, this could be the one, and then
in some cases it's warranted.
And then it was.
I definitely have dread now.
I thought it was Thor: The Dark World. Now that seems like a masterpiece.
No,
it doesn't.
I mean, in comparison, though,
they're about the same.
Which one would you rather watch?
Well, just because I've seen it less recently, Thor, but
okay, it's not good. It's not good.
It's not good. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Quantumania was worse.
Yeah.
You guys didn't have to do 3 hours of podcasting on it to ponder every minute of it. So right now it feels like an open wound.
Let me just promote that again. That's a really fun podcast.
I'll give that a listen. I started listening to it, but I haven't heard all of it yet.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay, so which one would you rather watch out of those two movies, or Batman and Robin?
Oh, I'd watch Batman and Robin. Heartbeat. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I would too, because even though it's a shit show, it has Arnie being Arnie.
Yeah, I think I have. I guess I wrote
saying "Ice to see you."
Yeah,
Doug's hanging his head right now.
Doug is upset thinking about this movie. I once watched it twice in a row to write jokes for it.
Oh, that's right.
So
I
think I might not be the least biased person about this film. Yeah, that was honestly traumatic. But anyway, enough about the movie we're not talking about.
But at the same time, hot on the heels of this film, The Flash is coming out. That's another multiverse movie. So we've gotten into this weird thing of, we're not just having superhero glut.
Yeah, this is a very specific concept glut.
Yeah. So I would be curious to see how the reviews are, given Spider-Man came out ahead of it and is thematically probably, if I had to guess, a bit richer, given what I know about what they're doing with The Flash.
I mean, this is nothing new. I just feel like DC is desperately trying to play catch up, but they didn't lay the groundwork.
Didn't run fast enough. Run, Barry, run.
Too fast. Now we got Michael Keaton.
Those commercials are just, he's all over those. You like Michael Keaton, right? Remember, he was the Batman? We're bringing Batman back.
Remember when our movies were good?
Yeah.
Or at least remember when you enjoyed them, because that was it. That's all we had.
Oh, speaking of, so I was on YouTube the other day and I saw a trailer for the most recent DC animated, like Justice League thing. Yeah. It's rated R. Like for violence.
It's not. It's for Superman goes full frontal and keeps dropping the F-bomb.
Finally, a movie for me.
Stop me, motherfuckers! I'm Superman.
Oh my god!
No, I had heard that. I have no idea. They're using they're a very popular Superman concept right now for that cartoon, and I don't know what's happening, and I just wait for them to come on HBO and watch 20 minutes of them and say that was plenty and turn them off.
Yeah.
Too
bad.
Yeah, that said, the animation style is pretty cool. What I was going to say about this one is, we talked a bit about pushing the story with through the art and whatnot, but it's also got an amazing soundtrack that really helps push it forward, and the sound design on this thing, as Jamie referred earlier to the thwips. There's a lot going on in this film, and I think they did a good job for the most part. I did hear some people who saw it in theaters that maybe didn't have the best sound systems.
I did want to talk about that because I did notice the very first scene, which is what people are complaining about. When Gwen is doing her monologue over her drumming, I could not understand what she was saying.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd read that some people were having problems also, but our theater luckily was fine.
But yeah, I mean, there's just so many aspects of it that end up, I think, making it pretty amazing. I will say, just literally, Jamie and I had parted ways to go set up for the podcast. I'm in one room and she's in another for people in podcast land. And I got a text from my friend whose daughter had just seen it by herself with some friends. He wasn't there. And he asked her how it was. And she said, not good. And it had a gross guy in it and something. I am suspecting. So 20 years ago, Jamie and I went to go see Fellowship of the Ring. And at the end of the film, we stood up and the young women behind us were mortified, going, "That's it? What?" And Jamie and I kind of looked at each other and scooted away as fast as we could to have our giggle. And my suspicion is, so she's a young woman, young girl, and my suspicion is this is her first cliffhanger. This is her first Luke, I am your whatever. No, I am your father. And
it's The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. And
sequel. Yeah.
It doesn't have a happy ending. Stuff ends on a sour note for everybody. You and I and Jamie and everybody who's our age knows everything will be fine in the next installment, most likely.
But they're not going to leave it like that.
I mean,
sorry, kids, that's it.
Yeah, it's hard to. I mean, not everybody likes every movie, and that's fine.
Yeah,
but honestly, even if the story wasn't that great, I would watch it multiple times just as a museum piece. That's how much I enjoy watching the visuals in these movies. They're just, even if the movie were bad, I would. It's I can watch it all day. It's just gorgeous.
Well, my suspicion is when the other part comes out, she'll reevaluate. I think she's Hopefully. Just having a response to, things ending pretty bleak, right?
Yeah.
Our hero is not in a good place, and things have gone south for everybody. But
don't watch Infinity War, kid.
Well, that happened there too, if I recall. There were people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I did want to mention
I too, even if I don't know where my bar is anymore for these types of movies, but this one is sailing over it, just visually, as you said. But with the rest of the package, I have so far behind on movies. There's a million things I want to see, but I will be going back to see this first before I see anything else. So.
Yeah, I think this is, not to overinflate it, but it's a really important movie for the animation industry. More so probably the first one, but the fact that this one's doing much better at the box office means it will be more of an influence. Mm-hmm. But I think, and this has been said better than me a million times, but the the animation industry was starting to get all very samey. Pixar was a huge influence.
Yeah.
And when Disney started switching to computer animation for all their stuff, it started looking samey. The characters would be sort of cartoonish, but everything else, it seemed like they were just going for like realism, like trying to make things look as much like the real world as possible. Like that was the problem they needed to solve, was making their animation look real instead of like making it look good or making it look interesting or in a certain style. It just seemed like everyone was like, well, if it's not Pixar, we're not going to risk money on it. It needs to look exactly like what Pixar is doing. So the fact that Disney took the risk, this giant risk, ripped up their animation pipeline and got all these animators to do it just to show what could be done, it finally feels like the computer part of it is not an impediment or something to overcome to make it look the way you want, but actually like a tool. Because you couldn't have hand animated this. You wouldn't get the same look, right? So finally it feels like computer animation is doing something new and fresh. And I think that's exciting. And the more people mimic it and do their own thing, the better. There's a bunch of movies coming out that seem to be sort of following suit. Even the new Disney one looks a little more stylized to me, a little bit. And then there's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that's coming out that looks
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah, very influenced. So I'm excited to see that too for the art.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's the first thing animated aside from one little blip on another cartoon where they were doing kind of a celebration of the history of TMNT. That something kind of looks how the comics did, or still do, which has always had a particular style to them, kind of a rough 80s anyone can draw style that made me think I could draw comics at one point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gorgeous in that trailer. I understand the most recent Puss in Boots also has stuff that was really cool in it. So I'm going to be going back to take a look at that. I just lost track of the Shrek averse or whatever, so I haven't looked into
I've never seen any of the Puss in Boots movie, but I think this one I've seen. I watched a trailer just because I heard it was possibly influenced by it, and it definitely does look like they took some cool things from it, from Spider-Verse animation.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be it'll get cheaper too to do eventually. All of these things are wildly expensive, but I mean, to your point, like, look, I love Disney animation, I love Pixar animation, but it's hard to ignore that you really could take all of the princesses and put them, the heroes of all of the movies from the last 20 years, which they have done in what was the Penelope movie?
Wreck-It Ralph 2, yeah. The sequel. And
you don't bat an eye going, yes, of course these people could all be hanging out and sharing artistically the same universe. And there's nothing particularly wrong with that. I think Pixar has done some really interesting things. When you're talking about the realism, like, I literally almost wept at some of the animation in Soul. Like, it was so good. Like, I just couldn't believe what I was looking at.
And none of this is to knock Pixar, by the way.
No. But they do amazing work. Realism and what they were able to do with light and managing time and space with that. But it wasn't Hobie Brown looking like he was cut out of a punk magazine and brought into 3 dimensions.
Yeah,
well, they even were made sure to make sure they even made sure the like cutout pieces that they used for the paper were a little bit faded, like you'd see on a poster. Like that attention to detail.
A bad Xerox, I think.
A bad Xerox. Yeah,
and like you when you're doing an animated movie, money is sort of a limiting factor, but other than that, you have carte blanche to make it look however you want, right? And so to have everyone just do the same thing is just so disappointing. And I feel like computer animation sort of took away a lot of the different stylistic differences because people started relying on the same platforms to build things. And I'm hoping this just blows it all up. Like I now that we have the ability. And like you said, money is still going to be a limiting factor for all these other studios that aren't Sony or Disney. But eventually that won't be the case. So I'm hoping we see all kinds of new stuff we've never seen before.
I was negligent and did not watch the most recent Pinocchio, not the Disney Pinocchio, but the live, but the
Stop motion.
Yeah, would love to
I
see
haven't seen it
that. I
either.
want to see also Mad God. I want to say is the Phil Tippett thing, which of course Phil Tippett's Phil Tippett, but anything you can do to start bringing in new things for people to see is a good, in my opinion,
For sure. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Jamie, I don't know if I have a whole lot of thoughts other than this. Doug, do you have anything you want to chime in with? It's hard when a movie is this good, because normally we spend time going, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that?
Well, and I also don't feel like I can speak that much to the plot because I don't remember it that well. I mean, yes, I remember what happened, but so much happened that my brain had a hard time processing it. So I do need to go back and see it again and again before I can fully talk about it.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I think we've covered, at a high level. I could talk about aspects for days, but I will list a couple of tiny little things to watch for if you see the movie again, when you see the movie again, that I noticed on the second viewing. The first time, I don't know if you remember, the first time Miles fights Spot, they go through a bunch of his little teleporting holes and they end up with fighting with some geese in a laundromat.
Yes.
With like soap and everything. Right before that, they mix in a bunch of little goose honks in with the music as soon as the geese get involved in this fight.
Oh my God.
I almost like choked on my drink when I noticed that the second time. It's just such a funny little thing. And the other, like, there's all these little things they put in, but these are the things that just stood out for me. When you're going in the Spider Society building, when Miles is running away from everyone, you go through all these little training areas. Like there's like a little shooting gallery where all the villains pop up one at a time, like a shooting range. And when Dr. Octopus pops up, he says, "Hi, Peter," in the voice from the movie. From like Spider-Man 2. I think it's actually him. So I think it's probably a sample. He says, "Hello, Peter." But the best one is, I think they've decided that every Spider-Man eventually has to like have this crucified hero pose where they're trying to hold two, they're trying to pull themselves apart to hold these things together, that they have a training center for that.
Yes.
Like there's a dude in that position.
Oh, that's amazing.
Just working out. Like that's because you got to do this someday. They have a training center just for the crucified hero pose that apparently exists in every universe.
Something you said reminded me of this, and I don't know what it was, but we've been talking about all the different animation styles, but they include live action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Because Donald Glover is in it.
Yes.
And they make there's I don't know if it's a flashback or what. I just remember seeing it. Like the Andrew Garfield was in there, and maybe
Tobey Maguire was in there too. Yeah,
was he? Were all three of them in there? I can't remember.
When he's explaining about the canon events, and you see everybody pretty much there. Yeah.
Okay, that's when it was.
They just refer to Tom Holland. I don't think they ever show his.
No, we don't. I don't think we see him.
But even those are like specialized animation styles. Like it's really cool. Like it really looks like the movie. I mean, it is the movie. I'm sure they just drew on top of it or something, but it's very cool.
Yeah, and I didn't catch this because I haven't seen in any of the Venom movies, but when Spot figures out how to travel between universes and he pops into that bodega shop and talks to that lady, that's apparently from the Venom movies.
Oh.
And that's why he's like, you seem nonplussed that there's somebody popping through a portal. And she's seen some shit, man. She does not care. That's why. It's because
Thank you for explaining that to me. I meant to ask Ryan about that.
I had to look it up, but she's in both of the Venom movies apparently. So that's what that was.
Funny. I happened to have seen one of those scenes. So when he popped in there, I knew what was going on.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice little touch that went over my head.
I will say, I think people who follow this podcast a long time, and from the name of it, may figure out that I'm a Superman guy. Kind of two things. One is back in about 2010 or so, there was a Superman run that had been abandoned by the original writer, and a guy who at the time was local picked up, Chris Robertson. And he wrote an amazing wrap up to that series. It was about 6 issues, and it ended with Superman thinking that someone had been stalking him, and basically figures out that no, this is it's a Superwoman, and she brings him to the Fortress of Solidarity. And it was such an amazing concept, and I got so excited. And then they did Flashpoint, which eliminated that from canon, like two issues later.
So the Fortress of Solidarity was a bunch of Supermans?
It was
also?
The Super Society.
It basically looked like the inside of the Fortress of Solitude, but like 1,000 times bigger, and there was just thousands of Supermans flying around. And
was there a Super Cat? I mean, was
God,
it like Crypto and
yes. It was like my God, the infinite possibility here. And I'm not saying Spider-Verse ever took any of that. I'm doubt anybody was reading what was going on in Superman at the time, but it's just frustrating to know they had like in their pocket and never did anything with it. Like Chris Robertson just handed this concept to them,
and they went, "No, we're good.
we're gonna do Flashpoint. Let's do something really grim and violent instead."
God.
So, and then I was talking to Stuart a little bit. We're both big Superman nerds, and it's just to have Superman around who has never had a movie, hasn't had a movie that has had this kind of impact since like I was 2 years old is a little bit of a bummer. It would be real nice if James Gunn put on the same hat he's using to make his Guardians of the Galaxy movies and at least got us somewhere in the ballpark. I'd be appreciative of
there's hope.
Yeah, decent storytelling and but bringing the possibilities of what happens, and because of the Drive, I think talking about the realism of Disney, or the environs that they create, the thing has been, well, what would Superman be like in the real world? It's like, doesn't matter what it'd be like in the real world. Do something awesome.
Yeah,
that's the thing Spider-Verse has figured out 1,000 times over. So.
And I think you just pointed to a problem, a big problem with making these comic book concepts live action. There's always been like a giant kind of a speed bump barrier to doing that, because as soon as you take them off the page and out of your imagination and try to make it all look like it could exist in the real world, which it doesn't, then you have problems.
Yeah.
We've all seen that, especially before special effects were as good as they are today, but that's why I've always thought that animation is a much better fit for comic stuff than
but Captain America 1990 is amazing.
She's right.
You can't beat that movie. It's everyone just go stop what you're doing and go watch that piece of shit.
Possibly only trumped by Captain America: Death Too Soon, the 1980 television movie. But yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff out there for you if you're looking for it.
I will say, on the topic of James Gunn and hope for DC, James, do you know what James Gunn's favorite superhero movie is?
Yes.
It's
Into the Spider-Verse. We just watched that.
Well, thanks for wrapping up my point.
You're welcome.
Well, it may be different this week. That interview was like 3 weeks ago.
It's true.
That's true.
I mean, a lot of people do like the sequel better than the original. I think the original just had such an impact on me, as we've discussed, that it's hard to compare them. I won't ever be able to objectively compare them. But I see what people are saying. Like, this one is, even more polished, maybe even better written, especially for the amount of the complexity of the script. So yeah, I could totally see that.
I tend to think of them as being a continuum. I don't think of them as being separate things.
I agree. And I think it kind of had to be more just to set it apart from the first one, just because it was such a masterpiece. Like, you're not going to recreate the emotional
you gotta do
punch of that. So why not go big and crazy? but still managed to contain it in that, it tells a cohesive story.
Yeah. One of my biggest hopes, by the way, while we're waiting for the sequel, which is less than a year, I think. So I think it's March of next year. We don't have to wait another 4 years for the next installment, which is super exciting. But I honestly hope, like, even with the the animation pipeline they have now, they don't need to do any additional work. Just give Spider-Man India his own movie. Give Gwen her own movie. There are so many characters, and I would, you don't have to do any more technical work, right? You just need writers and you just need talent to animate those movies. I would see anything that they produce in any of the universes they've created. I just think they're so talented.
I want to see Spider-Woman. I want to see her, and I mean the balls to make her 6-7 months pregnant was just chef's kiss. Amazing. It made her even more badass. Like,
for sure. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Motorcycle, check. Pregnant, check.
Yep. Yep.
Now's when you get to be mad at the internet. There were people who got decided they were going to say on Twitter that they shouldn't have done that because that's going to encourage pregnant women to do dangerous things.
Shut up, internet.
Yeah, that's what the internet was upset about. That's really what they were upset about. Sure.
Yeah, I thought Issa Rae as the voice of that character was perfect.
She was perfect. Yeah, I was worried that she wouldn't make it serious enough, and she would just try to be funny. And no, she totally just nailed what they needed for that character.
Yeah. So in 300 days or whatever, I think it is, we're getting another one, and likely we'll be back to do.
I'll probably see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you get around to it.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Can you buy tickets now?
If you could, I would have already have them. So no, I'm pretty sure. Not for lack of trying.
I'm curious to see. I don't think we have we do have an IMAX in town, so maybe we'll go give that a shot. See what happens.
I did see the original one in 3D. After I was very familiar with the movie, so I may have taken some substances and went to see it in 3D, and it was utterly fantastic. I don't know if you remember the original movie credits, but they dialed it way down for most of the film. It wasn't like, oh, something's in your face in 3D, but then the ending has all the infinite Spider-Men, and it's not supposed to be realistic, so they just turned all the knobs all the way up, and it was pretty goddamn outstanding. No one's showing this one in 3D, but I would definitely be curious to see if they were able to add anything cool to it. Because it's, these movies are excellent for that. Most movies I wouldn't say that about.
Moonbatten or whatever I can't remember how they spelled it.
Moonbatten, yeah, I think.
That would be amazing.
Oh my God, yeah, you're totally right. Anyway, if somebody shows it in 3D, I'll probably check it out. Because why not?
All right. If you enjoyed this, please write in and let us know. I'm on Twitter. Doug is not. I don't think. Jamie, are you wanting to tell people you're on Twitter?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. McSteens.
Yep.
That's it. That's my handle.
I'm at Mel Bodis. You can also find us at signal-watch.com. And we're on SoundCloud. And of course, then this gets distributed via the feeds and the intertubes out to many other places. So wherever you hit this, I do hope you'll rejoin us. Doug's been on prior episodes, including the infamous Cats Day Drinking the Movies episode.
Sorry, I gagged there.
Hairball?
That was, yeah. No.
And so you can dig around. This is going to be, I think, our 245th episode. So thanks so much for tuning in, and hopefully you enjoyed Spider-Man as well. If you didn't, I'm curious as to the hows and whys, but definitely want to hear from you in any case. And I think that is about it. I do know what I'm doing next. If everyone wants to wait a couple of weeks, then we'll also be doing Out of Sight, the J-Lo George Clooney.
Oh, awesome.
So
I say awesome because every podcast that Brian does, I get the option to watch the movie, even if I'm not on it. So
I do have one quick plug, if I may.
Plug.
My comedy teammates would appreciate it if I plugged Team Swizzle Beef. All our stuff is up on YouTube. We've produced about 7 or 8 sort of riff tracks, mystery science theater style things. So if you just go to YouTube and search for Team Swizzle Beef, there's our stuff.
I have some favorites in there, not least of which I believe is called Rocky Raccoon.
Yep, it's Ricky Raccoon.
Ricky Raccoon.
Yes.
You'll be a little traumatized, but otherwise enjoy.
Hopefully, you'll also laugh while you're being traumatized.
All right, everyone have a great one, and we will be back soon.
bye.
Bye.
Save you, I give all of me. Yeah, I can hear you screaming out, calling me. It's my fault, made you fall for me. So to save you, I give my all. Just to save you, I give all of me. I can hear you screaming out, calling me. It's my fault, made you fall for me. So to save you, I give my all.
That about wraps it up for this edition of the Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.